Kickoff Magazine, Deputy Editor. Taking your calls, 089-110-3377. Issue of ethics, paramount. Yeah, let's go to Santon. Gary, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome. Your thoughts?
Yes, I'll be very swift. I just want to find out, what if more than one journalist predicts the exact same score? What happens then? And since Dominic is saying that there's no issue of integrity involved here, I fear that this type of innovation with inverted commas, if some might add, will also then later be rolled out to referees, if you look at this thing nicely. Just like for him to comment on that and advise further. Thank you.
Gary, thank you very much indeed. Let me go to Sheikhs. We'll come back to those. Sheikhs and Kakabedi, good evening.
Robert, good evening and your visitors there.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, my question to these guys is that why, it might be improper, but why didn't maybe they take that money to help the first division? Because I think it's irrelevant to give the journalists money, whereas they are remunerated for their respective workplaces. And then the other one, did the PSL committee read this press code before they take this decision of remunerated referees for the job they are doing on their daily basis? And lastly, if this thing is making sense to Mr. Dominic Ntsele, to me, I don't think it makes sense.
All right, thanks so much. Indeed, let's take another call before we get a response here from the floor. Tabo on the road. Drive safely. Good evening.
Evening, Rob. How are you?
Good, thanks. Go ahead.
Thanks. Just a quick one, man. I'm actually disturbed by the representative of the PSL because, one, he introduced himself as the advisor to the PSL. And secondly, the very same person he's involved with the PSL club. Firstly, that's why you start questioning the ethics, because I mean, to me, that's a conflict of interest. And for him to come and insult our intelligence to say they did consult, the question was simple: who did he consult? He failed to respond to that. However, all I'm just trying to say is that I think PSL must just take stance and be brave enough and come to the public and say, this is the new stance that we're going to take after the discussion that we had today, because it clearly shows that they're just taking us for a ride. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much indeed. Let's deal with Gary's first one. Says, what if one journalist more wins this? What then happens to this prize money?
It was covered by the chairman in the press thing. It will go into
obviously it's a non-media. He just wants to know what happened.
Yeah, which correct predictions go into a hat, and the winner is pulled out of a hat.
Will this not spiral to then affect referees in future?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it doesn't make sense. How does it affect referees?
Now he says, well, what will be the next stop? If it's crazy with journalists, would you be rewarding referees next?
I know. I mean, he's taking it to its ludicrous level, but it's exactly there. I mean,
but people are thinking this is ludicrous as well.
It does not drop. It will not affect the referees. The PSL is very guarded as to the game. That is why I was very confidently saying that the writing of the journalists will never ever have a bearing on the outcome of the game.
But I'm just saying from a PSL perspective, because we need to walk away here somewhere further than we were when we walked in, is that having heard from SANEF, having heard from the journalists that are gathered here, having taken a couple of the calls, we'll address Sheikh's and Tabo's one just now as well, is the PSL willing to reconsider this competition?
The PSL has considered that, Rob, nobody is forced to participate. Those who, for employment contract reasons, for ethical reasons, for legal reasons, for religious reasons, do not want to receive a prize, they can nominate a beneficial charity to it.
Dominic.
Or participation is not forced.
No, we understand that. I'm saying that was cleared in the press conference. I'm saying now, obviously people have had time to digest what has been said. And there is an overriding and an overwhelming sense that it is the wrong way to go. Now, I'm asking you that is the PSL, after listening to consultation, which is now a public consultation forum, willing to relook this decision to go ahead with this?
Rob, let me help your listeners. Right from when this announcement was made, you sent a tweet out saying you see the innovation, our rewarding of journalists is bizarre. You are one of the key drivers against the initiative.
You're not answering the question.
No, I am. I'm addressing myself to your listeners.
You're addressing my tweet. Yeah.
Yeah. You are. No, and to your listeners.
Yeah.
Your listeners are listening, and you're one of the key drivers against this. So it is very clear in your invitations and in how you went about it. You went about it consistent to your disapproval of it.
I never asked any of these gentlemen.
There are in excess of 100 journalists who have entered for this thing,
which is wonderful.
Yes.
So you shouldn't try and skew what is being said. You're an advisor. You know your way around how to get things around. I mean, that is your job, right? So I don't think it's going to cut it here to try and skew the listener's opinion based on the invitation. I've met Mr. Moyo now for the very first time. Sbu, I never spoke to him, as well as we were told. Monji Makanya was coming through, and Mr. Mkabela came through. I had nothing to do with the choice of people that are here. So for you to come here without knowing how we went through the process of getting them is uncalled for. Sheikh said, what about giving that money to the First Division?
The First Division issue is a completely different issue. The First Division receives money. The statement was issued yesterday. They've decided, the decision was made, it went to the Board of Governors where it's unrelated to the First Division issue. The PSL faces issues. The PSL faces issues of attendance, of fan participation in the game, and an effect on
you, though. We've addressed it so many times.
But it is being addressed. I'm saying the PSL faces issues it must address. To therefore raise another legitimate issue. It's a legitimate issue, but therefore, in order to legitimize the PSL's quest to make the league competitive.
No, but obviously the First Division last season, for the winner, received less money than what a winner for predicting a score is going to get.
Rob, the First Division issue is legitimate. But the legitimacy of it does not take away from the fact that the PSL has to strive to constantly be competitive.
Umvuswe Kaya, East London. Good evening. Baba, welcome.
You know, I lifetime when this thing came to my attention one Friday afternoon. And what inspired that was because here was the league venturing into a bribe of comical proportions by literally wanting to bribe journalists. Now, for Mr. Ntsele to come here and say and dispute all the facts that Mpumelelo puts on the table, and I must put this on record that it's for the first time that I agree with Mpumelelo on anything. But what I want to say is that when a journalist predicts a team, that influences how the journalist previews a game. And it would influence how a journalist would report about the game. Those of us who have written about number of sports activities in the country know how these things would be exposed to the club owners who would even build intimate relations with journalists. And what will happen really is that the whole profession will degenerate into comedy of errors. I think the fairness is right to rebuke this conduct, and PSL must just do the honorable thing, go back, scratch this thing, take money into development, even pay more in terms of insurance of players. I think the PSL came to a theater, Rob, where there were specialists in terms of what would happen in the theater room. Instead of bringing a doctor, they brought a nurse who really can't bring any energy to this, because this guy is not giving us information that we need to hear. I think that I'm disappointed with this guy.
All right, thanks so much. Let me take Mafika in Pietermaritzburg. Good evening.
Rob Ntsele.
All right, welcome, Baba. Go ahead.
Fine, and good evening to the gentleman there. Rob, I didn't get it quite clear on the issue of the fans. How is it going to help the fans going to the stadiums? This is going to be more of a draw predicting the score. How does it help us to go into stadiums? That's my main question.
All right, thanks so much. Let's address that last question. I want to come back, Mr. Moyo, Mr. Ntsele, Mr. Mkabela, to bring their points forward.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Dominic. I think while it's fresh, you were just asking, how does this media innovation help the fans go to the stadium?
The innovation is about splitting the league into four: Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. It was thought wise by the PSL to involve the media in Q1 because they deal with the publicity element of the game. Going forward from Q2 to Q4, going forward, it involves the fans, and I'll ask the listener to be patient to wait for the PSL to announce an exciting fan participation, first time fan participation program into the league.
All right, and I missed out on Tabo's question, in the first batch of callers. He was saying that, is it not a conflict of interest for you where you've been a Pirates advisor to come on and be an advisor for the PSL?
Yeah, there is absolutely no conflict. The PSL is if you go and look at the PSL executive is made out of club chairmen. It's an organization of members. That's how the PSL is composed. And I hear and I read in the media that mistake is made over and over and over again. Therefore, there are no better stakeholders to the league and people who want to look after the league's interest than the people who are close to its business.
You talked about the club chairman. You're not a club chairman. You're an advisor to Pirates and a director, and you're a PSL advisor.
Yes.
Is that not?
I am close to the game. I'm close to the game, and I have skills which are indisputable. And the PSL sought my skills based on my closeness to the game and the skills which you yourself have alluded to.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, obviously, as I said, you're a marketer, you're a spin doctor, and those things do come across quite clearly. Mr. Moyo, you've heard the callers, you've heard what everybody says, yeah? I mean, are you gathering any information that the PSL is understanding journalistically where this debate is going, and do you see them ever coming forward and saying, gentlemen, we made a mistake, we're going to channel this money to a better cause and even to something more worthwhile?
You see, Rob, for me as a journalist, personally, my biggest currency is my integrity and my ethics, and how I'm perceived out there when I write a story. And I think the public has spoken so far. If we take this money from the PSL, and it's a lot of money, 250,000. I don't know how many of us have actually digested the figures that are being mentioned here. I can tell you, 3/4, if not all of my journalists will spend more time trying to win this money than trying to give me an accurate report. It concerns me quite greatly when I see the rigidity in Mr. Ntsele here in saying, gentlemen, we have a budget for you. How can we best come up with a prize that can best reward your hard work? To me, that to me should be the starting ground. There's been serious errors here in that the consultation is very silent, and at worst it might not have even happened with journalists. So there is nothing wrong with going back to the drawing board and saying there is this budget. How best way can we reward the hardworking journalists?
Obviously, that budget might not work in terms of what the PSL has in mind. I think the PSL has journalists in mind and what they would want the journalists to do with it and how it sits in their heads. Sbu, what's your thought given the direction that's being taken now? And what's your feeling overall in terms of what the PSL should do?
Well, I actually think that given the reaction that has happened, I think it will be prudent on the PSL to take a step back and review that did we make a correct decision, and also accept the olive branch that has been extended by Salef, that let's meet, sit down and talk about this But also I would like to add, Rob, that while the PSL says this was done in line with addressing the attendances at the stadiums, I really don't see how a competition for journalists and giving these prizes or prize to a journalist or to a one journalist or a few journalists that predict scores, how it would help and increase attendances at games.
Right, from your side, Mr. Mkabela, it does seem like you've extended, number one, let me try and establish this. You've sent out an invitation, or are you going to be having a conversation with PSL? Is it too late, given what Dominic is saying? Is it futile?
No. What we did, Rob, is that soon after the chairman of the PSL, Mr. Ivan Khoza, announced this competition, we then decided to talk as the executive committee of SANEF, and then we decided that we would issue a statement immediately, so that the public know where we stand about the products that we put out there. While in the meantime, we're trying to sort out and see if we can have a meeting with the PSL. So that is still in the pipeline. We are prepared to meet with them, and we think that the conversation will be very constructive. After that meeting, then the PSL can then say we have extensively consulted, and therefore that this competition is being reversed, hopefully.
They're saying 100 journals have entered. More than 100. Okay. What's your feeling on that?
There's a very interesting question that came from one caller, which Mr. Ntsele has not answered.
has the PSL read, or members of the PSL board, or Mr. Ntsele himself, have they read the press code? And I think that they haven't read it. And if they had read, hang on,
let them carry on.
If they had read it, the second thing they should have asked themselves: who are the media signatories of this press code? Who are the newspapers who are signatories to this press code? The third issue would have been: are the journalists who are apparently signing into this thing members of those media institutions who are in turn signatories to the press code? It's important, because one of the things that the press code says is that conflict of interest must be avoided. I must stress this, as well as arrangements or practices that could lead audiences to doubt the press's independence and its professionalism. This is one of those arrangements and practices where we think that our independence will be doubted by the audiences. Just imagine, Rob, I'm a sports journalist, for argument's sake. I'm a sports journalist. I cover the games, and I predict. And I happen to predict correctly, and my name is pulled from the thing by the auditors, Deloitte, and then I'm announced, and then here are pictures. Mpumelelo Mkhabela has won the 500,000 rand, or whatever the amount it is, because he corrected correctly. What do you think the readers of my newspaper will think of me next time they read stories about the teams that have predicted correctly or incorrectly? What do you think they will make of the things that I put out, the analysis that I put out, the match reports that I put out? What do they think when they see me attending a press conference of the PSL? Do they see me as a journalist, or do they see me as an ally of this chairman of this club, in whose favor I made a prediction?
Okay, Dominic.
Yes, coach. I just want to cover a base, because we are now concluding. The base I cover is that the journalists which were invited, all the journalists, by the way, in the PSL database, were consulted because they were deemed knowledgeable about the game. They were already making predictions. Mr. Mkhabela says we didn't do any consultation, or he ventured to say that we didn't do any consultation. We did a consultation in two fronts. One of it was legal. So because we didn't want to get into any legal problems, it was done with workmen's, and we consulted with senior journalists, some of which are signatories. I'm not in the habit of besmirching people's name and getting their names into controversy, so they will remain nameless. The journalists do not have an influence on the game, therefore it did not raise either ethical or legal issues. The other thing, and that's what I want to conclude with, the PSL is not an unreasonable organization. We will obviously look at this thing and how people like SANEF have responded to it, and apply ourselves on it. Just to make it this thing, the first time we heard about SANEF's response, there's never been any formal approach by SANEF for a meeting.
Yeah, sure, but they shouldn't be approaching you. You should be approaching them if you want to consult, isn't it?
Sure, no, we consulted, Rob. We consulted senior journalists, and we consulted legal.
If you go as far as saying senior journalists, you must tell us who they are.
I happen to understand, and you happen to understand reputation. I am not, when there's a conflict of this nature, mention people's names in vain. When we approach them in good faith for their opinion.
Sure. But then
it was an opinion.
Sure, you'd also have to understand as well that our interpretation of that could be that you did consult them, they are there, or we could also interpret it to say that they don't even exist.
It's fair.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, Rob, one of the things that Dominic is missing, and perhaps the PSL is missing, if they had consulted journalists, they seem to have forgotten that journalists don't work in a vacuum. He seems to be singling out journalists as if they belong to some other space. They don't belong to any other space other than the media. And the media is controlled by certain principles, is ruled by certain guidelines, certain codes. And editors are the custodians of what they produce. Editors are eventually accountable for what journalists write. Editors have vested interest in the ethics to which journalists should comply. He seems to be taking journalists as if they are not part of the media, as if they are something else. And that's a very worrying factor for me, because we might be dealing with an issue which is far bigger than we think.
All right, which then will obviously allow the media to go into that space and investigate. I just wanted to ask you, as we close off, we're getting into Crisalda's time, is that last year, for the end of season awards, you would be well aware that Sebo Nomvete walked away as the Absa Premiership Footballer of the Season.
Yes.
And he won how much? 150,000 rand, right? For playing an entire season of 30 games, 150,000 rand. And here, for a first quarter of games, people that don't even play, that are supposed to be reporting, who are employed by different media houses, get offered 500,000 rand for correct predictions. That's the premise within which I've made whatever statements that I've made, and it's on the basis that maybe that's why football is skewed these days, is that we lose focus of the game. Maybe the people are not happy with the product on the field, and that's what we need to work with together. The NFD is a big problem. The players are a big problem. The quality of the game is a big problem. And you award the player of the season 150,000 rand, we reward journalists 500,000 rand for predictions. That's my premise.
It's here where I got to see the legends of my favorite sport and restore